This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. At the end of the day, I'm just a bloke with a chest freezer in his backyard, and before undertaking anything such as an ice bath, you should consult your health professionals and do your own research. Now, time for the show. Before we begin, let's take a breath. Now imagine stepping into warm silence. No phones, no pressure, just you suspended in stillness. At Mind Over Matter practice in Victor Harbour, you'll find space to truly reset, whether it's in their float tank, a private infrared sauna, or a guided ice bath designed to bring you back into your body. Mention Trav when you book and receive 15% off of all treatments. Go to mindovermatterpractice.com.au. This is where the healing begins. G'day legends, my name is Trav Dittmar and I am the host of the Cold Exposure Hot Topics podcast. You'll notice the studio looks a little bit different this week as I'm down here with Mind Over Matter Practice and I'm sitting here with Dex, now one of the owners. Dex, how are you, mate?
Good, thank you.
Excellent. Now we haven't jumped in the ice yet, we usually do that before, we might do that afterwards today. But what can you tell me sort of about Mind Over Matter Practice generally?
So Mind Over Matter practice is about building people's resilience. It's putting people into uncomfortable situations and allowing them to adapt. So it's essentially the concept of putting people into a meditative state in a room of chaos.
Yeah, wow. And so we've got a few different modalities in which we do that. What got you interested in this sort of thing? How far back in your journey does this interest go?
Well, the body's physiologies interest me since I was a young child. Getting into sports and fitness was something I was very much interested in, and how far I could push my body. Psychologically, for me, stress was a big component, a driving force behind what we're doing. Anxiety was a big problem for me. So what I did up until we started Mind Over Matter practice was intense exercise. So essentially I'd go for really long runs, swims, you name it, anything I could do to get that anxiety down. And I found myself having to really push hard for a long period of time where I'd push my body beyond what would be considered safe. Right? And so I started training about 2 years ago. I started training Muay Thai. Mm-hmm. And what I found during that process was that I could push my body well beyond what I thought I could.
Yeah, wow.
So I would train and I would get to a point where I was exhausted, and it was only at that point that the coach would ask me to now show him what's left in the tank. Show me now how much of an animal you really are. Yeah. So at that point of exhaustion, no matter how many times I kept asking for it, the body kept delivering and delivering. And it made me realize that it was all in my mind. It made me realize that I set the limits. Yes, the body's only got a certain level of fitness, but I wanted to see how far that would go. And that's what led me to, with my studies, to further look into that. And I found that, yes, even with cold exposure, heat, altitude training, the body and the mind, they work together.
Yeah, you don't have one without the other, do you?
That's right, yeah.
So it sounds like to me, basically, it was brought on, you're interested in this area from a place of, I need something as an outlet for your own stress, your own anxiety, that kind of thing. And it's become something now which is still beneficial for that, but, you know, it's more about the challenge with yourself and helping other people through that. Is that right?
That's right. So there are brain circuits that are involved. So we've got what's called a default mode network in the brain. It's a network where we essentially allow our brains to drift, daydreaming and things like that, right? And that's at the time when we do too much of that, that's when we start to get anxiety, depression, things like that. Mm-hmm. So getting into the moment with such things as meditation is actually what gets you out of that network, okay? And nothing can stimulate that better than a stress response.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. So for me, I got into the cold for the first time and it shocked me out of it. And I couldn't believe how quickly I went from panic attack to calm, relaxed state, just from a quick stress response.
It's funny that, isn't it? You know, because when you, like you say, it is getting yourself into a stressful situation, when you're already in a stressed out state. It's funny how, I mean, it makes sense though when you think about it, doesn't it? Like, I might be freaking out, I'm, having a panic attack or something like that, but when I get into the ice bath, I'm not thinking about anything else except how cold it is.
That's right. That's right.
I suppose it's like a distraction mechanism in a way, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And so you're getting all those chemical rushes of the dopamine and everything. But what's interesting is that if you adapt, you're getting less and less of that response. That's why they've even been talking about, I've seen a few podcasts where they've been talking about you're doing it more than 3 days a week and you're getting less of a benefit. Well, that's the same with exercise, isn't it? If you exercise a lot, you're going to have to intensify that exercise to still keep getting those extra benefits. So the same applies to anything that you do, diet, no matter what you're doing. And I find that with the cold, if you keep changing, you're going hot, then cold, then really cold, back to cool, back to warm, you end up keeping that body guessing and that dopamine rush increases, right? If you start to adapt, you start getting less of that. So that's why we keep changing it. So when people ask me, why do we go really cold? Why do we go super cold? Well, the reason why is because you've adapted to the 10 degrees or you've adapted to the 8 degrees, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's that natural progression, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
And it's amazing, just from personal experience, how much difference that couple of degrees really does make.
Yeah.
Like I've had people who have come to my place and do my ice bath when it's like 2-3 degrees, and that's a massive jump down from, like when they're at 7 or 8 and they're shivering for an hour afterwards. And even from that 2 to 0, the response is so much different, isn't it?
That's right. And so when you're doing your cold plunges and you get to that 0 point, and I've seen you do it, I know you're capable.
Probably see it again today.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's the thing is that I would then suggest for you to take a week off.
Yeah, okay.
And then get back into it again and start building it back down again to 0 so that your body's constantly getting that benefit and it's pushing to that threshold level, to that peak and to that, what's the word I'm looking for, to that maximum benefit before it goes into the hormetic dip. So there's a hormetic stress response, and as long as you're within the threshold, you're getting the benefit. Your body's adapting into a beneficial level, right? To adapt. As soon as you go too far, we start going back down, start getting negative responses from the cold. So that's where the perpetual adaptation is crucial. You want to be constantly adapting. Once you've adapted, then you've got to back off and come back into it.
Yeah, okay. So would you even suggest then, because I've set myself the challenge of doing an ice bath every day.
Yeah.
Would you suggest maybe including some heat therapy in there, like a bit of a sauna as well, just to mix that up?
Absolutely. And even going up and down with the temperature. So you don't necessarily have to always have it at 0 degrees, and you don't always have to have it at 10 degrees. But the fact that you're changing and the body's not knowing your mind doesn't know what the temperature will be in each given day, you'll get more of a dopamine response. And studies have shown that if you keep it at a certain temperature, or what it's going to be, the dopamine response is less.
Yeah, I suppose you've associated your knowledge and your past experience with that challenge, haven't you? And it's
that's right.
I know that I can handle that because of this evidence
that
I have there. So, wow, that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And so is that where they say, like about 11 minutes per week they recommend for an ice bath? Is that where that derives from?
Yeah, so that comes from a study conducted by Susanna Soberg. Dr. Susanna Soberg, she was the pioneer of ice plunging in that way. She discovered how long it needed to be for minimum for benefits. She's always saying you don't need to be going down as cold as 0 degrees to get the benefits, which she's absolutely right. But once you've adapted to whatever temperature you're doing it at, you'll find that less and less the benefit will come. So you've got to keep it going back and forth all the time.
Yeah, keep yourself guessing almost.
Yeah.
And adapting in that way.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, we did touch a bit on how your journey with this sort of started. Was it straight away into things like the cold plunge and heat exposure, or did you go down a bit of a discovery path figuring out where your niche was?
It was. So I did start off with training initially, and then after that it went to the cold plunging, and then I realised that it is actually an acute stress response. So you could actually get benefits from skydiving.
Yeah,
bungee jumping. Stimulate the body's stress response, and it's going to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and then you got that whole cascade of events that comes with that.
Yeah.
For me, this whole journey has been about self-discovery. Okay, so I know that there are things out there that trigger me, just like anyone else does. But the difference for me now is that those same triggers they've been dampened. They've been dampened because your brain doesn't actually distinguish between psychological and physical pain. So when you start to dampen that response through exposure, right, that stress response suddenly is less feared. That stress response that hits you when you get into that cold water, you're not scared of it because you've been doing it daily, right? So then when you come across, and it's called cross adaptation, by the way. So when you, let's say you're getting into the sauna every day, you're actually adapting to low oxygen environments. You're adapting to hypoxia, to altitude training.
Right.
There's a cross adaptation because your body has to adapt to that heat. And in doing so, your heat shock proteins and hypoxia induced factors start to become chemicals that are released in the body to adapt not just to the heat, but now to hypoxic environments. Yeah. So there's a cross adaptation. So because the brain can't distinguish between physical and mental stress, you can imagine it's like a person with their eyes closed and all they can do is respond in one way, which would be the fight or flight response, right? That's it. Now you learn to breathe and relax during that fight or flight response. It will actually happen no matter where you are in that fight or flight response, whether it's in the ice, whether it's in the heat, whether it's in a meeting, podcast.
Yeah, wow, that's really fascinating, isn't it? And it's funny, like that exposure, like you say, how beneficial that is, both in physical responses, like you say, but also psychological, because like you say, you can't really control the anxiety center of your brain, the amygdala, for want of a better word. So. When you put yourself in those situations, say if you've got PTSD and a particular car type triggers you, by putting yourself out on the street, say, and just seeing that type of car drive past, it nullifies that anxiety response because you're in that fight or flight and you're teaching your body it's okay.
That's right. So as you mentioned, the amygdala, that's your fear response right there. But then you've got the hippocampus, which stores the memory. Okay. So you stored the memory and you've created a narrative in the prefrontal cortex based on that fear, and the response will be automatic. You'll automatically go to that response from past experiences. Now, if you were to train the brain to respond in a calm way, like you're doing now with your cold exposure, and the stress response comes up automatically, it's called classical conditioning. It automatically, your brain will revert to what works better. It's going to look at what works better. So when you go into the cold, have you heard of Pavlov's dog?
Yes.
Yeah. So essentially, Pavlov's dog was about feeding the dog. Every time the dog would smell the food or the bell would ring, he would salivate. And then what would happen is Pavlov would bring in a new stimulus, and the dog would start to salivate on something else. It might be a white coat or a bell. Suddenly it's not the food that's stimulating the salivation anymore. Same thing happens. So if something's triggering your nervous system to panic and you train it to calm down in that state, whatever other stimulus causes that panic, the same thing will automatically happen.
Yeah, it's almost that like subconscious reset once it's in your awareness and you've been able to cope in that situation. Wow.
Yeah. So we've done a few experiments where we would flip cards, and any time we get a number 8 on a card, we'd get down and do push-ups, and then we'd check our heart rate. Okay, and then we keep doing that multiple times. Every time number 8 comes up, push-ups, heart rate. And what would end up happening after a while is you would flip the card to 8. Without the push-ups, you just touch your finger, you put your hand to your pulse, and your heart rate will go up. Because your mind is already set to respond that way.
That's crazy, isn't it?
So these are experiments that have been known that you can do it with anything, really.
Yeah, wow. No, that's nuts, eh?
Yeah.
So, I was just thinking about the applications for that within breath work, and one of the modalities I teach is similar to the Wim Hof method, except we do it in rounds. So you'll do like 30 odd breaths and then do breath holds and stuff, and every single person will tell me when they start out it's a bit harder to get the breaths in and out, get the technique going properly, but by the time you get to the end where you think you're going to be more fatigued and tired, that's when they're getting the deeper breaths in. That's when their body is like you say, responding, like accustomed to responding to that point of stress or that point of effort.
Yeah, surviving.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. As you got baroreceptors and receptors in the near your arteries that respond to levels of oxygen or carbon dioxide, and that will affect your parasympathetic, so it will affect your heart rate and all that sort of stuff, right? Your body wants to adapt. Homeostasis is absolute, right? So the more you push it out of that homeostatic response, the more it will try to push back. And there's a process known as allostasis. So positive allostasis means your body is adapting in a way that enhances that capacity, if that makes sense. Okay, so if you're going into that's essentially the acclimation. Essentially, that's what acclimation is. Positive allostasis. You're adapting to such a way that now cold isn't affecting you like it did before. You still have the homeostatic balance, but now what I consider cold is no longer 15 degrees. Now it's 10 degrees.
Yeah.
So there is an adaptation process there.
Yeah. Wow. It's fascinating how it's all linked, isn't it?
Yeah. The mind baffles me, and I'm constantly learning every day. I mean, a lady walked in today and taught me something new about a protein in the body that I didn't even know about that was associated with cold exposure. So
Yeah, wow.
I'm going to do a bit more research on that and learn about it. But yeah, so it's always that's the thing about this, is that you'll never stop learning, and I think it should be explored more. I think, yeah,
Absolutely, and it's great to see, centres like yours and a couple of others popping up around, focusing on this sort of exposure and treatment for people. I think it's really, really beneficial, and I can only attest highly of the cold plunge sort of stuff, but there is obviously a range of services that you offer here at Mind Over Matter Practice as well.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk a bit about what other stuff we do here?
Yeah, so we've got the hyperbaric oxygen chamber here. So that one will go, it's a mild hyperbaric oxygen chamber, so it'll go up to 1.5 atmospheres. Delivers 98% oxygen. And so what that does is, as your body adapts to the high level of oxygen after an hour of being in there, you start to produce transcription factors to adapt, right? So, and it doesn't actually happen until you get out. So when you hop out of there, relative to that environment, this is suddenly hypoxic. Your cells interpret the environment as hypoxic, not enough air is out here. So it starts to adapt to a low oxygen environment, similar to what it would be doing when you're doing your breath work.
Yeah, okay.
So very, very much breathing in, breathing out, low oxygen in the blood and high oxygen in the blood, and all that's constantly changing. Well, this is doing it without the whole breathing. You just lay there and relax and let the mask do the work.
Yeah, and then you hop out and you're in that state.
That's right. So essentially it requires repetitive sessions, because your body needs to go from hyperoxia to normoxia, which is where we are now, repetitively, so that it will adjust that. And I can provide the research. I don't know if you can select put that up on you, but we've also got the cryotherapy.
Yeah.
So the cryotherapy is a little bit different to the cold plunge in the sense that it's very much a lot colder, but because it's less conductive, right? It's not water, it's gas, it's air.
Okay.
So then air is less conductive than water, so you don't get the cold shock. Okay. So you'll go in there and your heart rate won't change all that much in the few minutes that you're in there.
Yeah.
But what will happen is that, remember I was telling you about that circuitry in the brain? It will activate that, and you'll come out and you'll get all the psychological effects and all the endorphins and everything that comes with that, but you won't get that shock that you get when you hop into the cold water and you're panting, trying to catch your breath, and that doesn't happen. So it's somewhat different to that. I really enjoy it. The mental health benefits from the cryo, I think, outweigh the cold plunge, if you ask me.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. Then we've got the sauna. Ours is both steam and infrared. So with the steam sauna, the heat and the moisture in the air trap the heat in your body. So that increases to a level where you start to produce more growth hormone. And growth hormone we use for healing and regeneration of muscle injury or things like that.
Yeah.
But with the infrared, what that does is that activates an enzyme in the mitochondria called cytochrome C. And when that's activated, you start to produce more ATP, right? More energy. You start to feel really good and energized when you come out of it. It's a deep heat, and because it's so dry, you sweat. Oh boy, do you sweat! That's fantastic. Float tanks probably becoming one of the favorites now.
Yeah.
So people are laying in about 800 kilos of magnesium salt that's in water that's about body temperature, and you just lay there for an hour and let all the muscles relax and loosen.
Yeah, wow.
It's a very, very nice experience, that one. Yeah.
Cool. So there's a fair variety of services you have, and different points of challenge and benefit as well.
That's right. So there, it does feel great, but it's to me, ultimately, if your body is not surviving and it forgets that muscle memory of having to survive, as we age, we lose that capacity. And I strongly believe that that's the cause of reduced longevity. If you want to improve longevity, live a better, longer life, the body has to be continuously trying to adapt. Yes, if you can exercise, that's the best form. But the thing is, once you get to a certain point in your life, and some people have with disabilities, or there might be various reasons why you can't push your body to the extent where it needs to feel like it's surviving. This is it.
Yeah.
This is it for sure.
The way to go, absolutely. Yeah, and like it goes without saying as well, it doesn't have to be one or the other, does it? Like there's direct benefits from exercising and then coming to somewhere like here and doing some recovery, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. Recovery and regenerating and getting back out there to be able to do more. Resetting essentially, isn't it? I mean, you've gone out, you've done a workout, your body's just about exhausted, and then you come back and relax, and now all those processes are still functioning, and you're just helping them out. It's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, just enabling the process and recovering quicker and getting back into it sooner.
That's right, yeah.
Awesome. So I did want to go back a little step here. You mentioned before about your own personal journey with, how you had some triggers around you, whether that was psychological or physical. In terms of adapting to those stressful situations, did you directly confront those triggers themselves, or was it more like, okay, let's put myself into other situations that are stressful, like the ice bath or something, for example, and that will build my stress tolerance where I can apply that elsewhere?
Right. So that's a really good question. So in terms of the psychology that's involved, where I had to reason through everything and reinvent the narrative around my story, I wasn't able to even address it. It was a second that I thought about these things, bang, and it was on. Blood pressure going up, sweating, heart rates through the roof. I felt like I was going to pass out, tunnel vision, like you name it. It was bad. And it wasn't until I started adapting the physical side that I was actually able to say, okay, yeah, I can feel the stress coming on, but this is something I'm now familiar with. I'm okay with this. I'm safe. Just because my heart rate's up, it's not a problem. It's going to be fine. Calm down. Everything's fine. And I was able to address them, and like with your question, I was able to then hone in on what it was about it that was bothering me and work through it.
Yeah.
Without overcoming the physical sensations that were hindering that, I wasn't even able to explore that. I wasn't even able to go there.
And it's crazy, isn't it? How, obviously the body responds physically based on the environment and the situation that it's in, but how quickly that can cloud the mental judgment and all of that sort of thing.
Exactly.
And it's interesting, another guy who's come on the podcast before, one of his favourite quotes, shout out to you, Luke, is you can't control your first thought, but you can control your second. In that situation, there's none of that, is there? There's no logical reasoning and processing until you're at least in control of the physical response.
Yeah, that's right. So we create a narrative based on the experience. If your heart rate is up, let's say when you're jogging, you feel it's not a problem, absolutely fine. But if your heart rate's up when you're sitting at traffic lights, then something's not right. And so straight away you've created a narrative about that. If you were to say it's fine and you were okay with it, it wouldn't escalate. Because you're not generating a stress response based on that abnormality.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So it's how we see the stress response that's the problem, I think, more so than the signal itself.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like when you view it from a outside looking in perspective, it's easy to go like, say, every experience you have is a neutral experience. It's your attachment or your judgment of the experience which makes it positive or negative.
Right.
So I suppose, when you're in those stressful situations, trying to remember that in in a certain way where you kind of detach from the emotional baggage of it, say, and can see it more rationally. I suppose that's the trick, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, have you had people come in do the breath work with you, and notice that there was a funny sensation that came on, for example, cold tingly fingers when they're breathing, and they panicked?
Yeah,
have you had that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you do reassure people as much as you can, like whatever response your body has, it is a safe response, and it's all okay. But you never know what someone's going through and what their interpretation of the breath work is, what their interpretation of their situation is as well. And so quite often you'll see energetic releases when you're running breathwork sessions where someone might want you to lay hands on them and just be that comforting support. Other people feel the need to shake their arms as much as they can to get rid of that feeling. It's all a build-up of energy that needs to move somewhere.
Yep.
And yeah, like you say, if you don't have that confidence or that knowledge, it's very easy to step into that what's going on here response, isn't it?
That's right. And we do gain that knowledge. You were talking about the hippocampus before. We gain that knowledge from experience. So you'll do it, you'll go into that stress, and you'll find out, hey, this stress isn't so dangerous after all. It's not so bad. There's nothing to be worried about. When it does come back, that's the memory that you're starting to train. And it's neuroadaptation, it's neuroplasticity. Your brain is now choosing new pathways to respond, as opposed to the old ones that it was used to, and it was just going like automatic.
Yeah, without even thinking of it.
Yeah.
So it's all about, I guess, awareness as well, isn't it? Like, if you're not aware of, say, your triggers or what your body's like in the stress response, well, you're leaving it open to anything, aren't you?
That's right. And that's a good point you make. There is the awareness, so there's the reception, but there's also the demand. That's something that's overlooked, is that we don't trust that self-awareness. We don't trust that we can do whatever it is we're trying to achieve. So because of no past experience of it, so we panic, right? There has to come a point, especially in survival, there will be a point where you just put the demand on the body. That's where that kickboxing came in for me, because when you're in a ring and someone's trying to punch you and you're exhausted, you have to put demand on your body. There is no option. It's either that or get...
Yeah, you know what I mean? So, you can't just call stop. I'm tired.
Yeah, I'm tired. Sorry, I give up now.
Can we fight tomorrow?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's the demand as well. So I think mind over matter it really lines up with that. Mind over matter, where you receive from the body the information, but the mind has to be the one that makes the demand, not the sensation. The sensation can't control it. That's where panic kicks in. You're allowing sensation to navigate what the response is going to be. You have to be on top.
A1 mentally. It makes total sense why the business is named what it is.
Yeah, that's it.
Very, very lined up, isn't it?
That's so good that I got to finally express how that all comes into play.
Yeah.
That's good.
No, it is fascinating, and it's obviously very well thought out, so, that's cool. Ever wondered how extreme environments can actually make you healthier? Mind over matter practice in Victor Harbor is where science meets self-mastery. From cryotherapy and cold water immersion that activate anti-inflammatory and stress-reducing responses, to flotation rest therapy that reduces cortisol and boosts serotonin, to hyperbaric oxygen sessions that stimulate cellular repair and neuro-optimal neurofeedback to train your brain towards balance. This place is on the cutting edge. They even offer private steam and infrared saunas that may enhance resilience and longevity through controlled heat stress. Mention my name, Trav, when you book, and you'll get 15% off of any treatment. Go to mindovermatterpractice.com.au and see what your nervous system is truly capable of. Now, how does Morgwn factor into the journey? When did you guys meet? How did that sort of come to be?
Well, we met at uni, so we were studying health science, and we met there and we were studying, and I was going to actually go on further into medicine, but that we didn't pan out that way, and Morgan our ideas aligned really well. She's always been very fit and active, and we'd sit around and talk about these things all the time, and it wasn't until one day after an intense bout of training and the doctor saying to me, you can't fight because your knee's no good, and because you have to get a clearance to fight, right?
Yeah.
So you couldn't get a clearance, and we sat down and we said, look, why don't we focus less on your journey into fighting and maybe spend a little bit more time on your journey into improving adaptation and resilience. And so that's where we went together with that. And
Yeah, wow. And so from that sort of point to forming the company, how long was that?
That was quite the journey. So we lived in Victoria for a few years, moved to South Australia, we're living in Strathalbyn.
Yeah.
And when we sold that house in Strathalbyn, we moved here, and we used a lot of what we made from that investment to build this, to start this.
Yeah.
So it was a big risk, but again, having had the experience with stress and taking risks and pushing through new boundaries and, you know, stepping stones, focusing on problems as stepping stones as opposed to barriers, enabled us to achieve this. So
yeah, that's incredible, you know. And it's a big, like you say, it's a big risk, but it already shows the type of work, the type of treatments you do here, and the stuff that you've been experimenting with throughout your life directly have that application, don't they?
That's right. And I think that the niche thing that we offer, it's not just that we have the variety of systems and machinery and everything, but that we monitor everything. So we show you in objective measurements that you are adapting, that things are changing, that your body is becoming more resilient. We can see it. We can measure it. We can look at your past results, and in real time as we track it, we can see everything changing. So it's not just me saying, hey, you feel great, this is because this is happening. I can say, look, I'm taking your heart rate variability measurements, and it's telling you that your parasympathetic nervous system is working and your sympathetic is relaxed.
Yeah.
We can see that it was high when you came in and now it's down. And over time, we can see that you're generally sitting in a chilled out state, regardless of how much stress I put you in, because you're able to tolerate it now. Your tolerance level for stress has gone through the roof.
Gone up, yeah. And that's a really beneficial thing because, you know, there's a lot of like different realms and modalities within the personal development, recovery, fitness space. Yeah. The tangible scientific results are what's important to people these days. You find there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there with a lot of different things, but it is really, really cool that you've got the metrics and the science there to back up everything.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't ever post that we're a medical establishment by any stretch of the imagination. We're not treating disease, but you will find that with cold, like you would with a sports injury, you put ice on it straight away, it will reduce inflammation. We know that. That's no question. It will reduce inflammation. It will slow down nerve conductivity, so it will reduce pain. There's something called a gate theory in pain perception, where you can't have two sources of pain at the same time. I don't know if you ever watched that movie. Oh, what was it called? Major Pain, and he had a broken leg and he broke his finger to get rid of that. That's actually a thing. It will do that. So essentially, there are benefits that will come out of it. And we've had people here with arthritic conditions and things that walked out saying, "I feel fantastic, and my pain's not there. I feel great." It's temporary, yes, but it's relief. And a lot of the people are taking medications that for them that they feel like it's ruining their life. And so if they can find any alternative to use to subdue that inflammation or whatever it may be, they'll try it. Yeah. And I say never take our advice as medical advice. Always speak to your doctor. But certainly we've been seeing lots of benefits here with people coming in for various inflammatory conditions and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the story you mentioned about Major Pain there just reminded me when I was getting my rib tattoo done. As you can imagine, the needle hurts going over the ribs, but he actually said to me, just pinch your forehead the whole time. That'll distract you from it. Yeah. And it worked. The only thing was I walked out with a red mark on my head. But it's a very, very true point, isn't it?
At least next time you walk out the tattoo studio and someone walks past with a red mark on their head, you'll know what that was.
Yeah, exactly right. Like, show us the tat, come on.
Yeah, so even with like we said, we already touched on the inflammation, but we've also touched on the anxiety and depression and things like that. So it's mental health as well, and that's why we had the International Cold Plunge Day to promote that idea that mental health is important, and cold plunge is a significant contributor to improving that. Absolutely. Yeah,
and I mean, I can speak from personal experience about this as well, because I have suffered PTSD throughout my life and things like that, and been down the path of the antidepressants and how long was that rabbit hole really? You know, it's a mask to the situation, but when you put yourself, again, getting back to these stress environments, these controlled stress environments, I found this has been so much more beneficial. And it even translates into sleep as well, especially with the cold plunge, because once you are over that stress response, your endorphins release and you get that feel good hormone in your body, which, you know, for me at the very least, and again, not medical advice by any means, but A, you've proven to yourself that you can do something stressful.
Yeah.
But B, you know, being in that situation, you've not only survived but thrived. And as a result, okay, now I'm in a less stressful environment when I get out and I'm just in my normal life.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, there are definitely the benefits of the medications. I mean, you've got anti-inflammatories, you know, blocking prostaglandins in the body and stopping the inflammation. You, like you said, masking it, you're stopping it, not the cause. But when you go into, say, a sauna and you put yourself into that uncomfortable state, what you're actually doing is you're stimulating what are called dynorphins, right? And they bind to opioid receptors, right? And they're uncomfortable. That's that sensation of when you don't really, when it feels horrible being in there, you really want to get out. But what that's doing is, it's for a moment, it's dampening the dopamine response, so it's reducing dopamine, and it's also increasing production or upregulation of endorphin receptors, right? So then what happens is that when you get out and you get that release, that finally out, and you get that endorphin rush, you've actually got more receptors for them to bind, so it amplifies the endorphin response, right?
Okay.
So your body's doing the work. You're not manipulating it with an external source and causing something to happen. Your body is doing the work. So what happens then is it's long lasting. Your body's actually, it's becoming more elastic.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's able to do more. It's working. It's what's that saying? If you don't use it, you lose it. Well, you're now using it. And how often will you use your dynorphins? How often will you put yourself into an uncomfortable situation or do something you really don't want to do? I've found something very interesting recently, is that for those people who are scrolling all the time and getting continuous dopamine release, they get less of a response from the cold. They get less of a response of these beneficial adaptations, because the dopamine's continuously, you can't keep doing it all the time.
Yeah.
There needs to be a break. So doing these things that we don't like actually helps us recharge, so that when we come back, we've got more of a release of dopamine, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's sort of like the putting in the hard work and then getting the reward, isn't it? Virtually instantly, you know, by putting yourself into that shock response, whatever situation it is, endorphins release. I feel good now. It's straight away, virtually, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Probably the only real instant gratification system there is. It's like the get rich quick for health.
Yeah, and I find that if I'm in a bad place, I go to a worse place, and suddenly when I come back, that place isn't so bad after all.
Yeah, perspective shift, isn't it?
Yeah, big time. When you're having a rough day, you go put yourself in it might be exercise. Let's say exercise. You go and do some high intensity interval training where you're wishing that you didn't do it, and you get out of it and you're back to where you were before, and suddenly, hey, all right, I'm good. And nothing's changed. It's just that your body is interpreting this environment as compared to where you just came from as much more relaxed, much safer. Yeah.
And if you start your day with something like that, you've set yourself up, because you've had a win, you've achieved something hard, and like you say, you've returned to that state where it's not as bad as where you were.
Yeah, that's right. That's why we like to get involved with F45 and Flu Air Run Tribe, and you know, we'd like to. These guys are all about that, and they promote health and putting people through that. They understand the concept, and a lot of them are coming here and doing the cold plunging and the saunas and stuff, and I think it's growing in the community. It really is. It's growing in the community, so that's fantastic to see.
It is, and you know, I think since I've started coming down to Victor, I've seen a few different wellness type activities and people and businesses going around, and it's awesome to see.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's one of the best places in the world for it, isn't it? You know, it's never too hot here, and I mean, yes, you get the weather like anyone else does, but it's very coastal, very chilled out and relaxed.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's one of the best places in South Australia to live personally, but That's just my biased opinion.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to convince the wife to come down here. I think we'll get Bub settled first for a little bit, but I know my mum wants to come down here eventually as well, so it certainly is beautiful. Now, obviously, we've got that many different services that we offer here. What's your go-to?
What's my go-to service? It all depends. So if I am riding on the weekend, sometimes I ride with the WTF guys, and I'll do 100 kilometers or so, and I'll come back here. I'll jump straight into the oxygen.
Yeah.
To try to flush out that lactate, because I'm getting so much oxygen into my body. But if I'm stressed out and having a really rough day, I'll wait till the end of the day and I'll jump in that cold water straight away.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You find it's better at the end of the day?
Look, it's probably better early in the morning, but the thing is, I'm here at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Because we open up from 6 o'clock in the morning, so I'm here earlier, start cleaning and getting the sauna ready, and So if I was to plunge, I'd have to be plunging 4:30.
Yeah, it's a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah. So I'll be getting up earlier every day, I think. So look, I'll leave it to the end of the day, as long as it's not too late in the evening.
Yeah. I tend to find, like when I do mine at home, if I do it, say, a couple of hours before bed, that sets me up for a really good sleep that night.
Yeah.
I think if you were to do it just before you went to bed, you'd probably still be energised and all of that as well.
We've seen hundreds of people come through these doors and use the cold plunge, and I've never heard one person leave here and say that my sleep hasn't changed. That everyone that's come in here says my sleep's better. I feel various parameters, but the sleep. And what interests me about that is that science still, if you were to go look at the research, science still doesn't have strong evidence to support that it will improve sleep.
Wow.
And yet here we are, hundreds of people coming through the door, all showing me that they're improving their sleep. It's helping them get to bed at night. Yourself is included, myself included, and I think there's obviously a gap there somewhere. I think there needs to be some sort of consistency in the research around this sort of thing. I'll give you an example. We just had recently a study came out that talked about not using cold plunging before or after weight training.
Yeah.
It reduces the amount of gain you'll get, right? But then the thing is, there was another study that showed that if you're increasing, let's say you use a cold plunge before you do exercise, weights exercise, it actually improves grip strength, right? Because the cooling improves the grip strength. So whether the study, so depending on what kind of study they're studying, gives you different results. And this is where the problem is that there's no consistency in the studies. They're just throwing it all over the place.
All other factors and...
Right? And with scientific research, there has to be some sort of variables that match. So that we can get some consistency going, and it's just a shame that we're not there yet, you know.
Yeah, and I think that sort of thing probably would need a bit of funding and scope as well, because I'd be just as fascinated to see that as well. Especially when you factor in how much other research there is around sleep. It's like, drink this tea before you go to bed, have this tonic, do this, do that.
Yeah.
To have that scientific backing for this would be incredible.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. And, we try to give people all of their results. So when we measure everything, if they can take it to their doctor, if their doctor's happy that things are improving, whether it's their improvement of their blood pressure over time, it might be something that they'll be consider passing on for further research. So that would be good. So hopefully we can impact it in that sense as well.
Yeah, and it's funny because I actually have a heart condition myself called POTS, which is basically where blood flow doesn't occur properly in my body, so it doesn't get to the extremities where it needs to. Initially, when I was diagnosed with it, they advised against cold plunging because of vasoconstriction, which would make sense from a surface level thought. But once you get into the ice bath, you get your vasoconstriction and then you get out, the blood flow is so much more enhanced.
Yeah.
And, I'm on blood pressure tablets for this condition as well, but nothing fixes it, nothing helps me out, just quite like that. And if that had some scientific backing, with, you know, the applications in fatigue and stress management and everything like that would just be so much more concrete.
We have the same sort of thing with Raynaud's. Have you heard of Raynaud's disease?
Yes, yeah.
People fingers start to go, toes will go blue and or white, pale.
Yeah.
And we've been noticing people have been doing the contrast therapy. They're going the hot and the cold, hot, cold. Suddenly the colour starts coming back. Now that their fingers are all red right through when they come out of the cold water.
Yeah.
So the body's adapting. And it's this perpetual need, this perpetual addiction to comfort that I think is where the aging process takes place. You know, there was I think it was Dr. Peter Attia's podcast I watched a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about the downward turn in fitness as you age. But then he was mentioning that there may be a correlation between the fact that as we're aging, we're doing less. And that's the reason it's going. Not so much that it's the aging process that's causing it, but it's causing the aging process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it does, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, you know, whether that we will see some changes since with people doing this more and more. It's becoming an international thing, you know, and everyone's doing it now.
Yeah, exactly. And people who are, you know, out of their 30s, I don't want to say older people necessarily, but, you know, like people are getting into this sort of thing more, because I think, you know, you only have to look at society's general progression where we're spending more time on the phones, the couches are comfier, there's more on TV. It's so easy to be in your comfort zone. There's less need to put yourself into those challenging situations. So if this stuff does start to get a bit more momentum, which it is, it will do wonders for the health of the population.
Absolutely, because as we are sitting stagnant, our body's actually adapting to that. So that's where we lose that elasticity of our blood vessels, or the inability to expectorate, get rid of all the phlegm in our lungs and things like that, because we're not using them. We're not, you know what I mean? So
it's like something as simple as, you know, it takes me 2 hours to drive from home to here. I get out of the car when I get here, I've been sitting for a couple of hours, and in a couple of minutes' time, my body wants to sit.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've been adapted to, even though the best thing would be to...
Muscle memory, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we are. That's essentially comes down to the entire organism, is that it's based on memory. It's going to do what works, and it's going to go back to the easiest response, which was whatever worked the last time.
Yeah. So it's all about continuing that challenge, continuing to put your body and your mind into different situations. Absolutely. And adapting, isn't it?
Yeah, I highly recommend Atomic Habits. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I love that book, James Clear. Yeah.
It's a game changer, that one.
Isn't it?
I think it should be given to all the kids at school, and everyone should be reading this. This is absolutely game changer.
And if you can't, get the audio book, honestly. If you can't sit down and read it, just have it playing in the background.
Yeah, exactly. And I often like to play it when I'm doing things, like if I'm playing it while I'm in the sauna.
Yeah.
You know, just reminding me about those little 1% improvements, how they build up over time. It's absolutely amazing, you know?
Yeah.
It's a completely, it's essentially you're in the same environment, and it's now suddenly made that whole thing look different. Do you know what I mean? He's a genius.
He is, yeah, it really is, you know, and I've incorporated that particularly around my pots with my diet and stuff like that. And it's amazing how didn't need to make drastic changes, you know, 2 or 3 different things, substitute in and out, it becomes a habit. And just that little 5 minutes a day has changed everything going forward, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not something that happens overnight, but it's something, like you say, you've got to train yourself to expose yourself to it in order to get the benefit out.
Yeah, I mean, you'll notice a lot of it when your little bub comes along, and you'll start waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning without an alarm anymore, because you're used to it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Remember those days?
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot less control over my life from me and more from our little boy. It's all exciting. And again, something to adapt to as well.
That's right.
How can my body survive off of 2 hours sleep when I've got 8 hours of work today?
That's right. Yeah. You start to look at the world differently. I know I did. Everything changed once we had little ones come along, and my perspectives on myself.
Yeah.
You know, what's important in life, and suddenly you give significance to health and things that before you wouldn't have as a young man, teenager. That would have been somewhere at the back of the line.
Yeah, it's just, I don't care, I don't need to go to the doctors, but then it becomes, well, if I'm not well, my wife, my kids,
Right.
they suffer as well, don't they?
Yeah, priorities change, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I love the saying, though, you could have 99 problems until your health is one, and then you've only got one problem.
Yeah.
It all starts and ends with your health. And if you don't have that, you're not getting anywhere.
Yeah, you're right on there.
Yeah, so what's next for the business? What's happening this year that we're doing to grow?
Yep, so this year we're working on getting a red light therapy bed.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at working towards the second place we're building in Port Elliot. So we're going to have a larger establishment over there. We were looking at incorporating other businesses and services so that we can get massage and additional services. So some people, admittedly, they just enjoy coming in and having a sauna. They're just relaxing. They might have had a heavy week. They just want to relax in the quiet. That's fine. As much as I love to push people through stress. There's also the relaxation component to it, absolutely. So there's that, and we're working on it with some massage therapists, musculoskeletal therapists, physios, things like that. And I'm looking at going back to study again, get my master's in clinical exercise physiology.
Oh wow, yeah.
And then we might start to implement rehabilitation, but that's a couple of years away. So we'll see how that all pans out. But yeah, these are the visions that we're having at the moment.
Awesome. And so when are you looking at opening the Port Elliot location?
Well, they're constructing it at the moment, so I dare say it'll be end of 2027 maybe.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because they're building a hospital there and things like that as well. So.
Yeah. Everyone's building at the moment, so it does push out the process a little bit, doesn't it?
Now with winter coming, I dare say it'll slow down a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. That being said, though, you'll probably still get your saunas and those sorts of things.
That's right.
Maybe people will be a bit less game for the ice bath.
Yeah. Oh no, I mean the construction will slow down, but in winter time the sauna really picks up.
Yeah,
it really picks up, and we do promotions and things like that over winter, and so that's it was quiet first year, and now it's starting to slowly pick up, and it's not really quiet like it was back then.
And that's what you want, isn't
it?
Yeah,
exactly.
More people are getting the message, and even this year, obviously at the start of this month, we had the International Ice Bath Day as well, which your first big event for charity sort of thing. Are we doing anything more like that in the near future? Or?
Yeah, we will, and we actually when we first opened up, we did a competition where it was a certain amount of ice plunges, and then you won a holiday, $2,000 holiday.
Yeah, wow.
Choose your destination, essentially. So whether we do that again, we'll see. But we thought we'd just focus on this building at the moment, and then see where we go from there. We noticed that a lot of people have been coming in recently because of, I don't know if you know about the algal blooms that have been causing fish to wash up on the ocean.
Oh yeah.
So and their skin's burning. I don't know what's going on there. It might be whether it's climate change or but the ocean's warming up by the look of things, and so we've been getting a lot of people coming in because of that to do the cold plunging, because the ocean seems to be a lot warmer and stinging the skin. So I'm not sure what's the go with that. I don't know if you know much about that or.
No, certainly not from around the city sort of way. I've heard a bit about the algal problems and things, but
we've had down at Waipinga, they've seen seahorses and leather jacket fish and all sorts of washing up on shore, octopus. And,
wow.
It's been quite intense. It was on Channel 7, I think, the other day.
Yeah.
It's worth looking at. But, so hopefully we get on top of that one. I mean, that's our biggest asset is our lovely coastline, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Absolutely, but if they're not cold plunging in the ocean, they're coming here, and that's good for the meantime, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's good. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we're getting a lot more people on that basis for sure.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So where can people find you online if they want to connect with the business?
Yeah, so you can go to www.mindovermatterpractice.com.au. You can also contact us via phone or email. What else would there be? I'm just trying to think on the top of my head.
So we got your
Instagram, Facebook.
And that's all just Mind Over Matter Practice as well?
That's right, Mind Over Matter Practice. And you can check out the videos and the plunges and the experiences that we've had. It's been quite fun since we've opened up, so yeah. Yeah,
and I still couldn't believe this. You were telling me last time I was here, but how long ago did you open?
2020, so it was October 2023. 3.
Yeah, so just over a year.
Yeah.
And we've got all of these resources already. It's unreal, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It's expanded really quickly, and people have really, welcomed us and drawn in. So, thank you, Victor Harbour and surrounding, and thank you to you as well and what you're doing. It's
a pleasure. I think what you guys are doing is really resonating with people, and it's very clear as soon as you walk in that you guys are just so down to earth and authentic. You're not here to just pull money out of people's pockets. It's genuinely about helping people and benefiting the community.
That's right. Yeah, and I won't. If anyone doesn't see the benefits objectively or feel the benefits, I won't encourage them to come back.
Yeah.
If it's not working for you, then it's not working for you. But I'm yet to see that. So.
Yeah, exactly. What you're doing is working.
Yeah, that's right.
People are believing in it. So, no, it's really, really cool. All right, guys. Well, I think that might do us for today. Thanks so much, Dex.
Thank you very much.
On. No, it's always a pleasure. You can find me on my socials as well. I should probably plug myself. At The Journey of Trav on Instagram, and then Trav Dittmar on YouTube and TikTok as well. This podcast will be available on YouTube as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. But I do highly recommend, if you're down in Victor Harbour or if you can get down here, come and see Dex and Morgwn down at Mind Over Matter Practice. They'll look after you. So many different things to do, so many modalities of recovery to try. So thank you very much for tuning in for this week's episode, Legends, and I will see you next week.
G'day, Legends. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Just a reminder for where to follow me on social media. I'm The Journey of Trav on Instagram, Trav Dittmar on YouTube, trav.dittmar on TikTok. And if you are listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please give me a 5-star rating and leave a review as well. That would go a long way to getting this podcast out there. And if you are watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, share, all of that good stuff as well. Thanks heaps, Legends, and I'll see you next time.